A group of archaeologists travels back to medieval France to rescue their missing professor, only to become trapped in the middle of a brutal war. As history begins changing around them, Merrick falls in love with a woman destined to die, forcing him to choose between returning home or staying in the past forever. Meanwhile, a man suddenly appears in front of a speeding car after fleeing from armored knights deep within the forest. He rushing over to check on the stranger. Barely conscious, the man whispers only one word: Castlegard. At the hospital, doctors make a disturbing discovery. None of the man's internal organs are aligned correctly, not even his spine. When the doctors hand over the necklace found on him, Frank Gordon arrives, demanding custody of the body. Calm and composed, he takes the necklace from the police. Moments later, he receives a phone call from Robert Doniger and Stephen Kramer, and order him to collect every piece of evidence connected to the case. The police question him about Castlegard, but he pretends not to know anything. At the excavation site, Professor E.A. Johnston explains the War of Castlegard to the archaeology students, while Chris Johnston works as his assistant. Soon after, Andre Merrick enthusiastically continues the story of the battle. That night, Chris becomes suspicious that his father is planning to leave. After being pressured, Johnston finally explains about their donor, suspicious because they seem far too generous, and wanting to go there himself to uncover the truth. Back at the excavation site, Kate is surprised when Chris suddenly arrives carrying beer for her. He then explains that the tunnel she has been working on is connected to Castle Laroque. Afterward, Kate begins to notice Chris's feelings for her, but she tries to avoid it. The next day, he visits Marek while he is practicing archery. He picks up a sword, but Marek quickly takes it back, afraid he might hurt himself. He then brings him to see a 600-year-old sarcophagus, carefully showing its details. Before revealing something strange, it has no ears. At the excavation site, an emergency alarm suddenly goes off. They quickly prepare to enter before the area becomes contaminated by outside air. As the team prepares to descend, everyone grips the ropes tightly. Below, Marek discovers an ancient document and carefully places it into a plastic bag. Not long after, Kate finds a stone carving, but half of it is destroyed, leaving her frustrated. Suddenly, the exit begins collapsing. They immediately rush to escape, but Merrick becomes distracted after spotting a pair of eyeglass lenses. Josh Stern explains that glasses were only invented in the mid-1700s. He then reveals the document they found, signed by Professor Johnston himself, written 600 years ago. Chris suspects his father is pulling some kind of prank, but nobody believes it. Soon after, Josh presents the computer analysis, confirming the document's age is authentic. After calling the donor and threatening him, they arrive in Mexico, where Stephen explains the company and hands them identification badges. Inside, they discover a massive glass-walled machine. He reveals they have found a teleportation device before showing them the prototype. They try sending objects through it, but nothing reaches the destination. Soon, they get the idea to send a camera and point it toward the sky. That's when they realize the camera is somewhere near Castlegard, France. In the year 1357, Stephen explains they have discovered a wormhole locked to that exact point in time. Robert reveals the professor is trapped in the 14th century. After insisting on going themselves, they hope to bring him back safely, because what they need are cultural experts, not researchers. Moments later, Frank enters and tells everyone to prepare, only to find out he is being sent along with them, despite clearly not wanting to go. In the locker room, Merrick convinces Francois to join the mission, then explains to Frank that he speaks fluent French. After being persuaded, Francois finally agrees. The team says their goodbyes to Stern as Stephen hands out the return markers. Robert takes Francois' glasses and warns everyone that the process is going to hurt a little. They step into the chamber and take their positions. Inside the control room, the countdown begins while the glass walls slowly seal around them. A sudden wave of pain hits their bodies. Then, in an instant, they're transported through time. Moments later, they crash into a river. After struggling their way to shore, Frank quickly explains how the markers work. A woman named Claire suddenly appears and warns them to hide. The group rushes for cover, but Sir Dakir attack almost immediately, while another is struck by an arrow. Desperate, he activates his marker to return to the present, but seconds later, he collapses and accidentally drops a grenade, destroying the machine. Meanwhile, Merrick distracts the pursuing soldiers. After regrouping, Frank realizes one of their teammates is dead, but his return marker is missing. Elsewhere, Merrick searches for a safe place to hide and runs into Claire again. One of the soldiers tracks them down, but he's killed by a French archer. Merrick immediately grabs the fallen soldier's sword. After the others move on, the woman is suddenly captured by another guard who stayed behind, but Merrick manages to kill him. Back in the present, Robert complains that someone brought a grenade into the mission. Stern becomes increasingly worried about the team and keeps pressuring Robert for answers, but Robert has no idea what to do next. After finally regrouping, the survivors arrive at the village of Castlegard. Confused as everyone suddenly leaves, Merrick realizes this is the exact day the village will be burned to the ground. They blend in with the villagers and try to hide, but the soldiers eventually spot them. Their escape routes are completely blocked, while Claire is the only one who manages to slip away. They are then taken to a noble's residence. At that moment, Lord Oliver is seen training alongside his soldiers. He casually introduces himself, then mocks Merrick for being Scottish. But everything changes the moment he hears Francois' name. The soldiers immediately prepare to attack, only to be stopped by Oliver. So he explains that the enemy often sends spies into his territory. Speaking in French, he orders Francois to translate his words, only to execute him moments later. The survivors are then thrown into a prison cell. Inside, at that moment, Kate sees Professor Johnston, who looks happy to see everyone. But when he notices the blood on Chris, he quickly realizes Francois is dead. After Frank questions him, Johnston explains that he survived by promising to build Greek fire for Oliver. After that, they begin planning their escape, while carefully keeping watch over the surrounding area. Kate accidentally makes a noise, causing a guard below to thrust his sword up through the floorboards. Kate comes up with a plan to escape through the roof and convinces the others to trust her. At the same time, Merrick notices that Claire has been captured. Kate begins climbing upward and needs Chris to help her. But while crossing to the other side, she suddenly slips and falls, only to be caught at the last second by Chris. Kate then begins scaling the wall, stopping only when a guard passes by. Reaching the window, she peeks inside and grabs an arrow. Just then a guard hears her. Immediately she stabs him before he can raise the alarm. When the other guards return, Kate quickly opens the door, so they immediately overwhelm him. As they prepare to leave, Merrick says he will catch up later. Meanwhile, in the present time, the machine is almost repaired. At the same time, he spots a guard and readies his bow. Mark instantly kills the guard as he wakes up. As he knocks on the door, an axe suddenly flies toward him from Sir Dakir. After entering, at that instant he blocks the door with the same axe and helps Claire break a hole through the wall. Once he sees they have escaped, Dakir immediately calls the guards. In an open field, Frank uses the marker, but the readings are extremely weak. Seeing Frank trying to leave them behind, Chris becomes furious. Moment later, Kate refuses to leave without Merrick. After being persuaded, she finally activates the device, but to her shock, it no longer works. At that moment, Merrick pulls the small boat carrying Claire closer to shore. He tries speaking to her, but Claire cannot understand the references he makes. Just as they are about to reach land, French soldiers find them, but they recognize Claire. Merrick then realizes she is Lady Claire, the woman who was supposed to be dead and the key to France's victory. Without warning, English soldiers across the river rain arrows down on them. Meanwhile, after spotting guards searching nearby, they quickly flee and hide inside a house. But to their shock, the door is suddenly smashed apart. Chris and Kate manage to escape, but Frank and the professor are captured. All of a sudden, they set the house on fire with the two still inside. Moments later, Claire meets with his brother. Arnaud thanks Mark, but mistakes him for an Englishman. Once he learns Mark is Scottish, he gives him a horse and weapons. He explains that he wants to return to Castlegard, but nearby, English soldiers secretly spy on them before reporting back to their captain. Elsewhere, after escaping the burning house, Chris plans to head to Castle Larocque to find his father, but Kate suggests going to the monastery instead, knowing there is a secret passage there. At the same time, French troops are ambushed by English soldiers. Claire runs off alone and is chased by a knight, while her brother searches for her in the middle of the chaos. Meanwhile, Merrick becomes surrounded. Dakir takes his marker and knocks him unconscious. Elsewhere, Frank and Gordon are being dragged away by a wagon when Merrick is suddenly thrown onto it by the knights. Dakir greets Frank and removes his helmet, revealing himself to be William Decker, the missing ITC employee they have been searching for all along. He then kills Frank for abandoning him years earlier. Decker goes on to explain that he can never return home. A transcription error made it impossible. Despite their confusion, he compares it to a mistake in a DNA reconstruction process, like a fax gone wrong. Horrified, they realize the damage is happening inside his organs. Professor Johnston tries convincing him to come back anyway, but Decker refuses without hesitation. Back at the monastery, Kate rings the bell. She explains that they are friends of Edward de Johnston and desperately need help. Hours later, the English army arrives at Château de la Roque. The two are brought into the workshop, where Decker warns them to finish everything quickly. The professor is amazed to see all the materials already prepared, but deep down, he regrets what they are doing. One wrong move could change history forever. Merrick admits he already altered it the moment he saved Lady Claire. Horrified, Johnston explains that she plays a crucial role in this war. Beneath Château de la Roque, inside the monastery, Kate returns to the excavation site and desperately tries recalling everything she saw before. That's when she notices the box containing the rolled parchment Merrick discovered. Inside, it rests Professor Johnston's glasses. She quickly reminds Chris to put them back. Without them, they would never find his father. Moments later, Kate spots the strange stone carving they uncovered earlier. Realizing the truth, she grabs a wall-mounted torch and starts smashing against it. Chris immediately joins in. To their surprise, a hidden hole appears inside the wall. Excited, Kate orders the monk to summon Arnaud at once. Meanwhile, both armies prepare themselves for the coming battle. As night falls, the first trebuchet is launched. Professor Johnston warns the soldiers to be careful while loading it. One by one, the massive siege weapons fire across the battlefield. Soon after, the shots slam into the fortress walls. That's when Decker pulls the professor aside, and Oliver then commands him to use the Greek fire. However, when the ballista launches it, the impact looks like nothing more than ordinary flames. Seeing this, Decker asks Oliver to turn back. Then suddenly, The fire explodes violently the moment water is poured onto it. Satisfied, Oliver commands Decker to aid him further. Soon after, Arnaud rallies his soldiers with a fiery speech. Then they move into position. Both armies ready their archers. Seconds later, the order is given. Thousands of arrows soar into the night sky. The volleys collide mid-air before raining down upon both sides. Oliver then orders his archers to fire without flames, and just as Arnaud's forces prepare to fire again, without warning, a deadly storm of arrows crashes into their ranks. Back in the present, the machine is finally ready to operate, but Robert hesitates. The chances of success are far too small. Meanwhile, beneath the monastery, Chris and Kate move carefully through the hidden passage, but to her horror, the tunnel ends in a dead end. Desperate, she grabs a rock and starts smashing against the wall. Not long after, Arnaud arrives at the monastery with his soldiers, after the monk reveals the existence of a secret passage. Arnaud demands a torch, then steps inside without hesitation, while one of his men flips over the nearby desk to clear the entrance. Outside, Oliver finally loses patience after a trebuchet strike slams into the gate. Annoyed, he orders Decker to proceed with their original plan. Back in the present, Stephen tries to persuade Doniger once again. That's when he realizes Doniger is planning to run away. Moments later, the two erupt into an argument. Then suddenly, Robert shoves Stephen, sending him crashing to the floor. Horrified, he rushes to help, only to realize Stephen is completely unharmed. Meanwhile, at Chateau de la Roque, Merrick sees Oliver preparing to hang Lady Claire in order to force her brother's surrender. That's when Merrick steps out, threatening to blow up the armory unless Claire is released, ignoring Professor Johnston's warning not to interfere, but Decker refuses to believe he would actually do it. Cornered, and after an arrow strikes his shield, without hesitation, he throws the torch. Instantly, panic spreads. Everyone scrambles to get away, but it's useless. The explosion tears through the battlefield anyway. Meanwhile, after struggling through the narrow tunnel, Arnaud finally arrives only to find a dead end. Furious, he prepares to kill them, convinced they set him up. But then, the massive explosion from above tears open a hole straight into La Roque itself. Excited, Arnaud kisses both of them on the cheek. At the same time, the French army sees the breach in the fortress wall. Their morale surges instantly, and they charge forward. Just as Oliver gives the order to attack, Arnaud suddenly emerges. Without hesitation, Oliver orders his men to kill Claire, but Arnaud's soldiers cut them down first. Then, in the distance, Chris spots his father. Immediately, he stops the crossbowmen from firing, so he rushes in to help his father. Shortly after, they spot Merrick sprinting up the stairs to save Claire. Meanwhile, Arnaud faces Oliver in a brutal duel. Steel clashes again and again, until Oliver finally knocks him to the ground. Seeing this, Chris rushes in at the last second, just before Oliver can finish Arnaud off. At the same time, while rescuing Claire, he is suddenly attacked by Decker. Without hesitation, Merrick throws himself at him, and both men crash hard onto the floor below. The fight quickly turns savage. Decker corners him, and one brutal strike smashes into Merrick's ear. Excited, he realizes the man inside the sarcophagus is him. Merrick fights back bravely, and finally manages to kill him. Meanwhile, Kate and Professor Johnston sneak toward the gate and force it open, allowing the French army to storm inside the fortress. At the same moment, Oliver manages to shove Chris away. Enraged, he corners him for the killing blow, but suddenly, Arnaud stabs Oliver from behind. Chris then tells them to wait while he goes to find Merrick, but the marker is still on Decker's body, so Merrick searches through Decker's corpse. Suddenly, Decker grabs his hand and desperately begs to be taken home. Moments later, he tosses his marker, but to his shock, Merrick refuses to return, because in this world he has found the love of his life. Back in the present, Doniger secretly plans to sabotage the machine. Instead, he ends up trapped inside while it activates, accidentally swapping places with them. Seconds later, he is killed by a charging soldier. Stern quickly checks the machine, only to realize two of his friends not came back. At the excavation site, Professor Johnston receives a call from Kate. Soon after, they arrive at the discovery site, and to their surprise, they find a sarcophagus. Inside rests the tomb of Merrick and Claire.